It's not because I'm sad of the life that I had. It's because I'm grateful for what God's brought me through.
Amen.
So, I was born and raised in Texas. Grew up there 21 years. And, of all places, I wound up in Indiana thereafter. I was born May 28th, 1986, so I've got a birthday coming up if you want to give me some money later. I appreciate it. But I was born in a family that I was that statistic of a kid that had a broken family. I didn't grow up in church. I was never churched. I was never raised around it. As a matter of fact, I was the only church that I knew of. I was introduced to it briefly. That was because of my grandparents. And that's really all that I knew. But growing up at a young age, I was introduced to a lot of drug activity. I witnessed my mom doing a lot of drugs in front of me. I witnessed my mom getting beaten by my stepdad. I witnessed, I've been that casualty of molestation. I also, myself, was beaten a lot of the times to the point to where I would be black and blue. There'd be some times where I had to be put in a tub filled with ice to stop the swelling. And, I've always wondered what would make a parent do that. Why would a parent who conceived their child do this? I grew up thinking this is normal. But I always questioned, why are my other friends at school not getting the same treatment that I'm getting? And I never really understood how bad it was. And so, growing up, it was me, my mom, my stepdad, and my stepbrother. And we never really lived in the best part of towns. I never had all the clothes. There were a lot of times growing up where, we'd go 3-4 months without electricity, or there'd be times where we didn't have any food in the house, and the only thing we had was a raw potato to eat, or we had to scrape the mold off bread to make something to eat, or to have a sandwich, or anything. I had what you call a wish sandwich. I'd get two pieces of bread and wish I had some meat to make a sandwich. Come on! So, I never really had anything. Never had any clothes. I was that kid who, in school, now was made fun of because I didn't have anything. My clothes were dirty. I never understood that. And I grew up, like I said, seeing this and being subject to this beatings and molestation and not knowing any difference, and watching my mom getting physically beaten to the point to where her eyes would swell and her body would swell, and this is all I saw and this is all I knew of. And so, I remember there would be a lot of times where I would look out the window of a car or, the window of the house and look up and think to myself, there's got to be something that's better than what I'm going through. And I remember sitting there and telling my mom, not knowing any knowledge of who God is or what God is about, but I remember telling her, God's going to do something with me. Little did I know, several years down the road he would. But I grew up seeing this stuff, and I was introduced to a lot of gang activity, and a lot of drug activity. The neighborhoods that we grew up in, like I said, they weren't the best. I grew up in a predominantly black neighborhood with a lot of gang activity. So my brother and I were the only white people in the neighborhood, and growing up at this young age, we would constantly get picked on and constantly get beaten up and constantly come home with black eyes and stuff stolen and everything. So in order to stop these things from happening, okay, I'll do what they're doing. I'll join them and I'll do what they're doing in order to stop getting beaten up. So I began to be used and begin to pocket drugs and give them to other people. You'd never suspect a 5, 6-year-old kid, having drugs in his pocket. So I began to do that, and I began to see all this, and it saved me from getting beat up, so I was happy about that. But I didn't know any different. And so finally, I was probably about 8 or 9 when my mom left my stepdad. During this whole time, never knew any thought of who my real father was. I always questioned why he wasn't around, but I didn't know who he was. And my mom wanted to split from my stepdad. We left and we moved in with my grandparents, which saved me from having to live in cars and women's shelters, which I'd done through that entire time. But we moved in with my grandparents, which was my mom's dad and his wife. And I was about in 4th grade at this time, and I remember my mom enrolling me into a school probably about 5 minutes away from where I'm at, so I just walked to school. But the first day I get to school, recess, I get to fight. And okay, we're going to finish this up afterwards, because I'm not done. I wanted to keep going, but recess was over, couldn't keep fighting. So I told the kid to meet me behind the building in the school, and so everybody was around. I remember grabbing this kid's face and smashing it into the school wall and walking off. And that began to take me down a road where I grew up constantly fighting. I fought neighborhood kids. I fought everybody at school because I was that kid who was picked on. I was that kid who was made fun of. And the way that I was able to stop it is I would beat you up. I would fight you. And I would prove my point that, just because I don't have these things and just because I don't look as good as you do or have the clothes that you do, you're not going to make fun of me. I don't think so. So I began to get mixed in the wrong crowds again. A lot of gang activity, running the streets, staying until 8, 9, 10, 12 o'clock at night. Fighting people, stealing things from houses, breaking into houses, everything. And by the time I got out of 5th grade, I'd been suspended 8 times from school for fighting. So I was statistically a troubled child, but I didn't know any different. I was going to be one of those casualties because of my home life. And my mom finally moved out of my grandparents' house. She got an apartment and started going to middle school. And I was in 6th grade, and shortly into the first 6 weeks of middle school, I got into another fight, and I did the same thing. I smashed this kid's face up against the wall because he was talking about me and my family and making fun of me, and I didn't appreciate it. And so I got suspended, and I continued to go down this road and continue to get suspended for fighting and detentions and this and that, and in-school suspension. Teachers, the principal knew me by name because of how many times I was in his office getting beaten by him. But that year I actually wound up failing 6th grade because I didn't care. Nobody was going to care about me. Nobody was going to care about my well-being. Why should I care? Why should I better myself? I'll just be like everybody else. So I failed 6th grade. I had the option to go to summer school, but my mom didn't. We didn't have any money, and I didn't go. So that entire year, that entire next year of school, I stayed home. I never went to school. I was never homeschooled. I was never anything. I just ran the streets, and that's all I did, and that's what was fun to me. So eventually I wound up getting enrolled into a charter school and going there. I got put in 6th grade because I never finished. But obviously, that year following, as I'm getting put into 6th grade, these kids are 11, 12 years old. I'm 13, 14 years old, or what have you. And I'm almost a foot taller than these kids, so it kind of looked a little awkward. So they moved me up to 7th grade. I wound up doing my 7th grade year there. Had a lot of fighting problems again. Come back my 8th grade year, and my 8th grade year is where it really took a turn for the worse because I was suspended twice, or not suspended, but I was expelled from school twice. There was a kid who was making fun of me, and I told the teacher many times, look, please have him stop making fun of me. This is really upsetting me. Teacher didn't do anything about it. So if the teacher wasn't, I'm going to. And I remember grabbing a pen, standing up and walking to this kid's desk, and stabbing him in the temple with this pen. Solved everything, never made fun of me again. But I got suspended from school, or expelled from school. Thankfully, his parents didn't press any charges or do anything against my mom. During this time, I was at home, expelled, and my mom and I were at home, and there was a knock on the door. It was a youth pastor in his youth group. They were out evangelizing, and this is cool. Maybe I can make some new friends. Maybe I can actually finally be liked, because I was one of those kids who was extremely insecure. I didn't know any boundaries. I didn't know how to deal with people. I didn't know how to interact with people because of the life that I had. I always thought everybody was out to attack me. And because of that, I would act out in many different ways to get people to like me, which in turn, that didn't happen. They just made fun of me even more. So I started going to church, and finally, started doing all this, and I was involved in a dance and drama team. And this is the coolest youth group I've ever seen in my life. You got a dance team, you got a drama team, you got a pyrotechnics, these costumes, everything. We'd go out and they'd go on trips to Colorado and go skiing. They'd go to all these different places, and I'm thinking, this is totally new to me. I've never done this before. If this is what church is, I want to do this. It's just fun. Why not? So we began to do all these dance. We'd go to the movie theater, and we'd set up shop and have the dance team there and the drama team there, and we'd do our whole performance. Now, mind you, at this time, I'm on the drama team. I didn't care, but the only thing was I just wanted to be recognized. But I didn't see how God was beginning to use me, even though I wasn't living for Him. See, that's a good thing. God reigns on the just and the unjust. And it doesn't matter where you are. And even if you don't know it, God can, as long as you're a willing vessel, He'll still use you. So I began to do this, and I began to see all this stuff, and there were a lot of times where You know, at youth group, you know, many people would get saved, and I didn't care about it. I was, hey, I'm here to have fun, whatever. But also in the same sense, I was longing for that acceptance. I was longing for somebody to love me. I wanted to be loved by somebody, because I wasn't getting it at home. And the only way that I thought I could get it was from the streets. Well, you know, people on the streets and engaged, they'll say they love you to your face, but when it's time for them to get in trouble, they don't want to have nothing to do with you. They'll throw you under the bus faster than anything. So I just wanted somebody truly to accept me for who I was. And my 8th grade year, I got back into school again, and I got expelled again because somebody was making fun of me. And I grabbed this kid, and I got him in a chokehold, and I wouldn't let go. It took 5 or 6 teachers to finally get me off of him, because I was going to kill him. That's all I was going to do. I didn't care who it was. I was going to kill him, and that's what my intentions were. And finally they were able to get me off of him, and I got expelled again. I got sent home, and I got beat again. Because that's all my mom did. And whether it be with a wire hanger, with a extension cord, with whatever, it didn't matter. Whatever she could find is what I got beat with, and it was to the point to where I would have welts and bruising. But again, I didn't know anything different. So finally, I got sent to a school my 8th grade year that I finished out, and finally went through it to the point where I didn't have any trouble. I just wanted to finish 8th grade and go on about my business. Well, that was the year that George Bush had gotten elected. And he had sent out a tax credit to all the families, and my mom got $500. And the youth group, every year we had gone to this youth camp. It was called Extreme Camps, and this is the funnest camp I'd ever gone to. It had paintball, it had a big ropes course. It had a huge pool, and I mean, it had all these things that were so exciting. So I wanted to go again this year, knowing that we didn't have any money, and knowing that, my mom quit her job and was on the verge of getting evicted, and knowing that, it was a small shot, but I told her, I said, hey, I want to go. So it was in August, or actually it was the end of July, beginning of August in 2001. Well, during that week in camp, I didn't know it until I got home, but my mom got evicted from the house that she was in. So I had no place to stay. I had no place to go. Literally the only clothes that I had were the ones that I put in a single suitcase to go to the youth camp. Friday came around, and that was August 3rd, 2001. And that's the day that changed my life forever. I was taken in by my youth pastor.
Amen.
And I'm a 15-year-old kid who's got this life and has got these problems. And my youth pastor takes me in. He's got him and his wife, 2 little daughters. And if I've ever seen a man or witnessed a man that has been more of the example of Christ, it's him. When I moved in, I started a brand new school. I knew nobody. So I was able to get away from all these things that I had known. You know, it's kind of like coming to a Jesus moment. Your old self has passed away and the new person has come along. That's how it was to me, and going to this new school. I knew nobody. Never grew up in this small town. I grew up in an extremely small town. If you blink, you'd pass it. But I remember getting enrolled in this school, and it's a fresh new start for me. So my youth pastor, who I call my dad, he began to mentor me and began to talk to me about the Lord. I didn't really think anything about it until there was one night that I was faced with a very serious decision. There was one night I had stayed up and everybody else had went to bed, and I was looking at things I shouldn't have been looking at in my youth pastor's house with his two daughters. And God wakes him up, tells him to come into the room, and he finds me. That isn't a big shame. Getting caught looking at stuff you should be looking at in your youth pastor's house. You know, I didn't know what to do. So, obviously, he was extremely upset because he's putting his family at risk with me being there. And then I remember shortly thereafter, I got grounded that whole year because of that. There was no fun in my life at this time. But that's what saved my life. I was faced with an option shortly after that had happened. He comes to me and said, okay, well, you're going to be grounded for the entire year. Here's a promise book. It had multiple scriptures in there of anger, hatred, bitterness, lust, sexual desires, everything. He said, you're going to memorize a section of this a week. And you're going to say them back to me. And if you don't, there's another week added on to you being grounded, and you're going to memorize more. I said, you're stupid. I ain't doing this. No. He said, okay, so either you'll do this or you'll go back and live with your mom. Well, I'll start memorizing scripture. The last thing I was going to do was go back and live with mom. I don't think so. But I was doing this because I was being forced to. Plus, I didn't want to move out, so that's the only reason why I did it. But as I began to memorize scripture, little did I know it began to change my heart. And I remember sitting in bed one night and just thinking to myself, this is absolutely stupid. I can't, look, I've got like 40 different sections I've got to memorize. That was like a total of almost 800 scriptures I had to memorize. This is stupid. I can't do that. And I remember sitting there, feeling overwhelmed, faced with a decision to either do this or move out. And everybody had talked about God since I've been going to church, and I was like, you know what? I'll I'll think I'll give it a shot. And I remember sitting there, getting down, and giving my life to the Lord at that moment. And telling God, look, if you're real, if you truly are who you say you are, then I need you to show me. I need you to make this real for me. But if you're not, and this is a joke, I'm done. I'm over this and I'm completely done. So I began to really give it my all. I began to really study these scriptures, and I began to memorize them. The way that I had to memorize them, I had to write them down. I probably went through about 40 notebook, papers full of how to write these stinking scriptures down because I didn't know what else to do. But as doing that and as being repetitive, those scriptures began to sink inside me. And they went from head knowledge to heart knowledge. So I'm in the middle of my freshman year. I'm grounded, having to memorize these scriptures. I'm also playing football. I'm also at church Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, every day of the week. So I was like, okay, we'll see what we can do. I began to see all my friends at church talk about what God's doing, and then witnessing to these people and getting kids saved and this and that, and I'm thinking to myself, yeah, I want that. I want to be able to do that. I want to be able to have that opportunity. But I was still very scared, and I was still very insecure. I had a real big fear of man, and a real big fear of rejection. But, I began to find out, if God is for you, who can be against you? Nobody. So, my dad began to give me a challenge. Look, hey, once you start witnessing to these people, why don't you start doing this? I'm thinking, no, I can't do that. I'm not that person. God's not going to use me like that. But you see, Moses said the same thing. Moses had a stuttering problem. Peter said the same thing. The biggest moment that changed Peter's life, I believe, is when they're sitting in the boat, that storm's coming in, and Jesus said, Peter, come to me. And at that moment is when he took that step of faith, and he stepped out of the boat. And that's what I had to do. I had to be able to step out of the boat and open my mouth and begin to let God use me. So the defining moment for me, we were coming back from a football game, and the entire football team was on the bus. And I'm like, okay, well, if there's any time that I can have all these kids together, it's right now. They ain't going nowhere. They're on a bus, Jack, and you ain't going nowhere. So you're going to listen to what I have to say. So I get up, and all the boldness I had inside of me, I stood up. Everybody got quiet. I had all the coaches on the bus and everything. And I said, look, I go to church. I'm a Christian. I believe in God. I don't cuss. I don't do this stuff. I don't want to. It's not about that for me. It's about living for Jesus. And that's all I knew. And at that moment is when things began to change for me. Because I was able to witness to everybody on my football team. And as that began to happen, God began to use me to save my football team. And whether it be in practice or before football games, everybody would come to me and say, hey man, I've got a test coming up, or I've got a headache, or this or that, or whatever, will you pray for me? That's fine, no problem. Let's do it right here. When you're talking in the middle of the hallway, yeah, why not? Look, if I'm not ashamed, you shouldn't be ashamed either. So I began to pray for him in the hallway, and I began to be that person that everybody knew not because of my own doing, because obviously what I was doing was completely wrong. And the fact of all my insecurities and all my imperfections. But you see, once you align yourself with what God is doing, all of your insecurities and all your imperfections are made perfect in who He is. And that's when He begins to use you. Because you're willing to take a step outside the boat. I began to bring my football team to church. Sometimes my dad would get mad because we'd have to go pick up 12, 15 of them. But hey, look, Jack, you're going to know Jesus whether you like it or not. Okay, that's all it was. That's all it was. I don't care who you are. You're going to hear what I have to say. So we'd load them up in the back of the truck, bring them to church, take them home. Do it again the next week. Do it again on Sunday. Do it again on Wednesday. Everything. So that was my life. And during being part of, a youth group, every year we would have this large banquet. Everybody would get dressed up. Everybody would wear tuxedos and get all nice and limos and everything. And, this has been going on for a couple of years now. And awards were given out for the most godly person. Awards were given out. The main person that's influenced lives and this and that and everything, it was absolutely amazing. But I would go to these things, and I'd never come home with anything. Never had anything. And I never understood why. Well, my freshman year, as God began to use me, not only did He begin to use me at my school, but He also began to use me in my youth group. And the people that were the leaders and that everybody looked to started looking towards me. And I began to take that and began to share that with others. Because the life that I had, now mind you, living with my youth pastor, I had no other choice. So I was either going to be this way or I was not. And I always had in the back of my mind, well, if I don't do this, I'm going to be kicked out. So I better keep doing this. So I just kept allowing the Lord to use me. Banquet time came around. I'm excited, tuxedo, everything. And we go and everybody's, they're starting to hand out the awards. And my name gets called constantly. Most approved, most godly, the most this, the most that. And I remember going home with pretty much every single award. But for me, that was such a defining moment because I was able to see how far God has brought me. And so that was really exciting for me. But as God began to use me in school, I began to talk to the lunch ladies, and I went to a school where my dad graduated from, so everybody knew everything about me and my family, so if I did anything, they'd tell my dad, so I could never do anything wrong. So that wasn't working out too well. But as I began to talk to the lunch ladies and begin to share with them about who I was and what I was about, I come into school one day, getting ready to eat breakfast, and I begin to start to hand them some money. I said, no, don't worry about it. I'm thinking, what do you mean, don't worry about it? No, your lunch is paid for. No, it's not. I hadn't paid for it yet. Well, what had happened is all these lunch ladies had joined together and bought my whole lunch for the entire year.
Yeah.
And it was so huge to me. Because you don't see the example that you're setting until God blesses you with something. So that began to happen. And So I just lived that life. It was so consistent for me. I'd get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and have my quiet time and spend time with the Lord and go to school and go to football practice and come home and go to church, and that's all I knew. I was constantly surrounded by this godly example because my face was in the Word. That's all I knew. Every year we'd go to summer camp. Every year we'd have a banquet. Every year this stuff would happen. Well, I'm going to rewind just a couple of years. I'm going to pause here, but my very first year going to extreme camps, I had a camp counselor. His name is Jeremy Meister, and I saw his life, and I saw the example that he set, and I said, I'm gonna do what he's doing one of these days. I'm gonna do this. He's going to a place called the Honor Academy, which is a Christian internship. I said, I want to go here. I want to do this. This is when I'm 12 years old, not even with my youth pastor. I want to do this because he impacted my life so much. So junior year goes around, or sophomore year goes around, junior year goes around. I finally went to the final camp I could go to. And then I wound up applying for this Christian internship that I wanted to go to. It was my senior year, and I was able to apply for it and everything. And so I applied, and the example that I had set those 3 years in high school, I threw it all out the window my senior year. I began to drink, I began to party. I began to get involved in things I shouldn't have been involved in. I began to pop pills again. And I vividly remember somebody coming up to me and asking me, hey man, I thought you were this person. And I thought you were this Christian. I said, yeah, well, everybody has shortcomings every now and then. That's all that I could think of. But I had let so many people down because of the example that I had set. I didn't care though. I wanted to do my own thing. I'm 18 years old. I've lived to the point of, everybody's expectations. I'm done. I want to be able to do my own thing. So I began to drink and I began to party. And all of that example that I set, like I said, was thrown out the window. Trust is built over time, but it takes that fast to destroy everything you built. And all the trust that I had with all my friends, I ruined everything. Because I was that typical Christian that would go out and party and go to church on Sundays and give their life back to the Lord and go out and do it all over again. So during this year, like I said, I applied for the Honor Academy, and one of the requirements were to go on a mission trip. And okay, that's fine, no problem. So they gave me the option of going to Dallas, Texas, which I was 15 minutes away. Why would I want to go on a mission trip to Dallas when I've already been there 30,000 times? I don't care. I don't want to do that. I can spend $15 in gas and get there faster than spending $800. I don't think so. So I called her back and said, no, I want to go somewhere else. I want to go out of the States. So I booked a missions trip to Tijuana, Mexico. This was in July of 2005. This missions trip was huge. There were 800 people on this missions trip. Newsboys were there. So we had a rendezvous point in San Diego. And I'm sitting there and I actually went up seeing four of my friends there, so I met with them. We hop on the bus from the airport to go to the church we have to register at and everything. So we get there, and as we're waiting, I finally get registered, and as we're waiting in line for the bus, I'm sitting there talking to my friends, and I glance over, and there's this girl checking me out. All right. She was getting the signals that I was sending to her.
You get that story backwards? All right.
No. She knows the truth. But we begin to eyeball each other, and we begin to talk. And we begin to, to have a little bit of time together. And she was there with some of her friends, and I was there with mine. The bus came. And it was time to say, okay, well, I'm getting on the bus, we'll see you down there, maybe connect, whatever. I get on the bus before my other buddies get on, and they go ahead of me, and there's only 4 seats left. And then they all take them. I have to come back off the bus. None of my friends, nobody. So I come back off the bus, and I see this opportunity to talk to this girl again. Okay, and I've always blamed her for making me miss my bus, but if I had not, I'd have never met my wife.
Amen.
So the whole week we sit there, and we go and do this mission trip and build these houses and everything, and I'm talking to her, and just really spending time with her and getting to know her and everything, and I was really digging her. Look, there was something about her, and I knew at that very moment, for me, I had the realization that she's my wife, and that's it. And there was nothing, nobody could do to tell me anything different. And so the mission trip came to an end. She gave me her number, and I went back home, and I got back home, and I got involved with a girl I should have gotten involved with, and everything I experienced in that mission trip just threw it all out the window again. Mind you, this is like 2 weeks before I go to this Christian internship. So I go and have all fun and party and drink and this and that and everything. And 2 weeks later, I'm off to this mission trip, or this internship for a year. And, we're out in the middle of nowhere. So if somebody were to die, you're never been found. And so we're in this bubble of Christian surrounding, and you got 24/7 being with Jesus, and that's all you do. We had ministry placements, and we had core groups. A core group was you had a core of about 10 to 15 guys and a main leader for the entire year. Then there was another group of a core filled with 10 to 15 girls and their leader, and another group, so on and so on. All the girls were separate, and all the guys were separate. Couldn't date on the campus, couldn't do anything. But they encouraged you to build these friendships and begin to spend time with these people, because a lot of times you spend time with these people, and these are relationships you build, and they stay with you for the rest of your life. So I'm there. I go in August, and I'm there, and this and that, and Jessica was so impacted at the mission trip, and she heard about this honor academy, and she had applied, and she'd come back home to Indiana and begin to work and everything, and while I'm there, in this core and having a good old time, and her and I would still communicate. She said, hey, I come in January, and she got accepted, and she comes in January, so I'm thinking, okay. Not saying that it would happen, or it could happen, but what would be the likelihood of her getting put in my family core? Obviously, I was thinking about myself at this time. But out of 600 or 700 kids, very small likelihood. She gets there in January, and well, she's in my group. So I take the opportunity to continue to ignore her. And then we go through the whole year, and we get there. August comes around, and I graduate, and I go back home. It was one of the hardest days of my life because I had to leave all my friends that I had built this relationship with. And I didn't want to go home, but I had to. So I go home and get back to my daily life of working, and she stays at the Honor Academy. Well, during this time of going back to the church that I grew up in, my dad had stepped down as youth pastor and began to be over the finances of the church. And there were a lot of times where my dad would take money out of his pocket to make sure that the doors of the church would stay open, bills were paid, and everything. I'm not going to get too deep into it, but eventually what wound up happening is my family and I stopped going to this church because we were being told that we were the reason for this church losing the building, when in all actuality my family had put tons and tons of money, but it was the easy way out. You're over the finances, you're going to take the brunt. So that happened this entire year. Jessica gets out. She graduates January of 2007. Graduates January 2007. So at this moment, those chains of not being able to date are off. And I push the pedal, and I go full blast. And I'm going to let her know, look, hey, this, right here, this is all you're getting. So deal with it. She didn't want to. She was, she was just out of the Honor Academy. She wanted to come back home, get resituated, and regrouped, and really just keep her focus on the Lord. But, yeah, keep your focus on the Lord, but you're not going to forget who I am, Jack. I'm going to make this known. So I began to continuously pursue her and pursue her and pursue her and pursue her over and over and over and over again. Finally, she, look, hey, leave me alone. Leave me alone. There were many times where she called other people and tell look, hey, leave her alone. No, it wasn't happening. So finally, God gave me a dream about, it was a very graphic dream about how I was to propose to my wife. And said, hey, I called her one day and I said, hey, I got to talk to you. Because at this time she'd been really praying about it and just really seeking the Lord. And because she didn't know if she was ready to date me or not or what have you. But I began to share with her this dream. I finally began to realize to her that I am the person that she's going to be marrying. She finally got that revelation. That's what happened. Jesus came to her. Okay? It's like getting saved all over again. So, all my relentless efforts of pursuing my wife finally paid off. I feel like I finally won the best gift other than Jesus that anybody could ever give me. And this is 2007, and I was like, you know what, hey, and she told me multiple times, look, I'm not moving back to where you live. You know, and we'd kept a long distance relationship. There'd be times where I'd fly up and visit her and her family and spend time with them, and begin to do those things, and then finally I was like, you know, I'm spending too much money on these airplane tickets, and if she ain't gonna move down here, what's my other option? So I packed all my things, and in August of 2007, me, myself, and I moved to Fort Wayne, Indiana. I tell you what, you know, all the times I've moved, I've never had this experience. Other than going to Colorado for a skiing trip, I was never out of the state of Texas. I didn't want to be. But, you know, I knew if I wanted to marry my wife, that's fine. I wasn't going to force her to move, because I had moved so many times, I just got used to it. So what's a new state? Why not? So I get up here and start working and start getting things together, and in May of 2008, I got a job at you know, at the time I'm thinking, hey, wow, this is awesome. You know, I got a job, I can provide for my family, I can do this and do that and whatever. By this time I'd already proposed to my wife. But also at the same time, I've got all this hurt and baggage, pain and bitterness that I've never been able to release because of getting hurt with the church, and not knowing my biological father for my entire life, and having all these issues and everything. So I get this job, and this job wasn't the easiest job. I was that guy that if you didn't pay your bills, I was going to come to your house, beating on your door, collecting your stuff. And there were many times where I was faced with guns being pulled on me, knives being pulled on me, getting in physical altercations. That's my job. That's what I was told to do. You know, hey, you know, you didn't pay, it didn't stay, so something's happening. So, you know, I get this job, and all this time, all this hurt, pain, and bitterness is just continuing to swell over me, and you know, the last thing you want to do is get involved with the wrong crowd, and you've got all this stuff going on. Well, I got involved with the wrong crowd again, and I began to drink, and I began to party, and I began to go out. I'm going to do all these things at the same time of being a youth leader at a church. If you want to call somebody a hypocrite, that was me to the definition. Because I go to church on Sunday and Wednesday, put on this facade, and then in turn go out and do whatever I wanted to do. That's because I was getting more acceptance from people on the streets than people in the church. And that shouldn't happen. But that's what happened. And so we get married November 8th, 2008. And I'm still working at Renter Center, and there's a lot my wife didn't know at this time. She can see it, she can sense it, but she didn't necessarily know to the full extent of how bad it was with me, how much I was going out and drinking, or how much I popping pills or whatever. And I hid it very well. Not a lot of people knew. So I was working there. I worked there for almost 2 years, and I got fired. And during the whole time, I was deep into some bad stuff, and the best thing that ever happened at that moment was me getting fired, because I was able to separate myself from everybody I knew and get out of that life. Because I was trying to be somebody who I was not. I was trying to be accepted by people who I thought were able to better me. And I thought I was, in my thinking, I'm like, hey, I can sacrifice a little just, in order to get a shoe in their life and get a witness to them. It didn't happen. It's easier for somebody to pull you down than it is for them to pull you up. Or for you to pull them up, sorry. But during this time of me going through this stuff, there'd be several nights where I'd come in 11, 12 o'clock at night, either off of work or, hanging out with everybody. My wife was the only consistency of Jesus in my life at this one moment. And there'd be many times where I'd come in, I'd go to sleep, and my wife would stay up praying over me, commanding everything that I'm going through to stop, and rebuking these influences and lies that the enemy is telling me. And that's what was my saving grace. My wife doing that and staying consistent with what God had told her about me. So I got fired, and like I said, I separated from everybody. And I got back to my true roots of who I really was, who God had truly called me to be. And I began to seek the Lord again. And I wound up getting a job at Frontier, but I was able to, like I said, separate from everybody. And I was able to deal with, or not deal, but confront a lot of the hurt and a lot of the baggage and a lot of the bitterness that I had towards my family and the people that I was around my entire life. And I began to forgive them, because I wasn't around these people, but they still had control over my life because I had not released them from what they had done to me. And in order to get true freedom, you've got to be able to let go. And so I finally let go, and I just began to let God deal with everything. And God began to take me on a journey. And He began to really define me as who I was. And I began to see myself again as who I saw myself when I was in high school, and how God really wanted me to be. And I'm so thankful, one, not just from my wife, but the influences I've had from family, my mother-in-law, my father-in-law. I'm so thankful for the influences that they've had, and not giving up on me, and not casting me to the wayside, but really truly believing in me and knowing what God had called me to be. So, eventually we wound up leaving this church, and the church we were going to, and then separating, which is really cool away, stopped being youth leaders and everything, and wound up going down this road of trying to get pregnant. 2.5 years in trying to get pregnant. And if you really want to question God, that's what we did, because I didn't understand what God was doing and why He's doing it. But I've come to realize I'll never understand God. I'll never understand why things happen the way that they happen. But I know at the end of the day, God is still God, and He is still King of Kings, and He is still on the throne. And regardless of whatever I got going on, He is my rock. So I began to get into this deep depression, and I began to stop caring about everything. And, I didn't start drinking or anything, but I pulled away from everybody. And I pulled away from, stopped talking a lot, because I didn't understand. But in those moments, those are the times we really truly need to turn to the Lord. Because if you don't, you're going to get caught up in the what am I doing wrong? Or God, why aren't you doing this? And you begin to blame God. You don't want to play that blame game, because it's not going to lead you anywhere. But my wife and I, we've been on this journey. We're still on this journey. But what's led us here? I started coming here April, March, somewhere last year. We've been coming here for the past year, and the freedom that we've been able to have from coming here, from you guys, and really beginning to get back to our true roots of who we truly are. And I'm so thankful for the people that are here, for the influences and the lives and the prayer warriors and everybody that's here. Because sometimes people don't understand how much they mean to somebody until they're going through something. So I know that, if I can go through what I've gone through, and I can be beat, and I can be molested, and I can not have electricity, and I can have this stuff, and I can be one of those casualties to society, and I can be labeled as a mistake, and I can be that kid that nobody cared about. If I can be that person, God can still truly love me and forgive me for all that I've done and wash me and set me free. He can for anybody. And I know that because I'm a living proof that I've been saved and I've been sanctified and redeemed by the blood of the Lamb. In all of my imperfections. All of my feelings have been washed. And I've been made new. In my weakness, that's when I find my true strength. And I know that I've got an eternal redemption that will never go away. I've got a house that will never fade. I've got all these things that God has given me that I'll never have to worry about again. But most of all, I've got a salvation that will never die. so thankful. So thankful for that. And I don't know what to do, but I don't know if there's people here that's been faced with, if you've been faced with trials and different things in your life, tribulations, and you're at the point of no return, and you're thinking, yeah, I don't know what else can go wrong, I don't know what else I can do, whatever. And you're looking for something, and you're searching. See, you can try to fill that void with alcohol, with drugs, with money, with whatever, but you'll never be able to truly fill that void with that one thing. And that one thing is Jesus Christ. And I encourage you, if you've never truly accepted Jesus Christ, I'm giving you that opportunity. Because if He can save my life, then He can set me free. I know He can do it to anybody. You don't want to leave here. You know, I know it's, you don't want to leave here in question. And something happened and you spend the rest of your life in hell. So if you've never had that opportunity, or if you've never jumped on it, I'm going to give you that opportunity. Because it'd be foolish of me to get out here and talk about what God's brought me through and not give anybody that opportunity. But also, what you've got to understand is that you don't have to change at this very moment. Don't think that, hey, I've got to stop doing this, or I've got to stop doing that before God will accept me. Because the good thing is He accepts you for exactly who you are. And that's what I love about Jesus Christ, is that He loves you for who you are, regardless of your imperfections, regardless of your impurities, or regardless of what you do wrong. See, we're judged by man, but in the end, we only have one judge. And in the end, man's opinions don't matter. And I don't care what anybody thinks of me. I don't. Because I know that, in the end, I only answer to one King. Man is not my judge. So, that's my life in a nutshell. That, God's able to do that. Like I tell you what, man, He can do anything.